Good afternoon. Welcome by the SECO webinar, How Can Your Business Survive the Coronavirus Outbreak? Gert Kogenhop will give a nice presentation about how to survive the coronavirus. My name is Vincent Jentjens. I will be one of your hosts. I'm the chairman of SECO Institute. I actually have only one slide in this whole webinar, which I will explain a slightly bit about the SECO Institute. And then I hand over to Gert Kogenhop, who will do the whole presentation. SECO Institute is Europe's leading institute for cybersecurity and continuity certifications. Our mission is to educate people, professionals, for job-specific function. So we have different fields where we train people to become for example, a certified information security officer or a business continuity manager or a crisis manager. You can take trainings with SECO Institute when you're a beginner or even when you're an expert. If you want to know more about SECO Institute, just go to our website. Everything is explained there. And then I think that was the shortest slide I ever did. I give the presentation now to Gert. Gert, welcome.
Thank you very much.
Yours.
Thank you. Hello, everybody. My name is Gert Kogenhop. As you can see, you see a picture. I don't see yours. Hope you are all well in this situation we are in, that we are facing right now, with a lot of people working at home, a number of people off sick, but I hope you'll be able to do your work, and I hope that the damage for yourself and for your organization that you work for is going to be limited. We don't know where we are right now. We don't know where the end is. So it's a time of uncertainty. A little bit about myself. My background is in finance. I've been a finance director in several organizations, and one of them was DELL in the 90s of the previous century. I was a regional finance director in Northern Europe. Since 2006, basically the British Standard publication, I'm in business continuity management, and I have my own company called BCM Plus. Besides this, so my working relationship with organizations, I am chairman of the NEN, BCM and Crisis Management Mirror Committee, the ISO organization here in the Netherlands, like the British Standard Institution, the organization that handles everything ISO related. And as Vincent explained, I'm course governor, resilience and business continuity management at SECO Institute and trainer. And that's in this case through the Security Academy. Other than that, I'm author of a lot of articles. I do write a column in a local quality and sustainability magazine in the Netherlands and Belgium to get attention to our subject. We don't have a magazine for business continuity management in our region, so it's still pretty immature at the moment. So what I will do is briefly explain what business continuity management actually is, what are the benefits of a business continuity management system, the source of impact and how to prepare in this specific situation that we are in at the moment. And maybe a very legitimate question, are you too late now to react from a business continuity management perspective? Mariette, if you have missed it, you can see that one later on, did a piece on business continuity, on crisis management, and that is something completely different from business continuity management, and not everybody understands that, to be honest. So let's initially say, what is business continuity management? Actually, business continuity is simply a capability, and that is a capability to keep on delivering your products and services when something really bad goes wrong. And really bad means not a part of the building where there's a small fire or a blackout of one of your buildings while you have 17. This is really for the continuity of your business as a whole. Very important in this definition that you see here is the word predefined, because predefined basically says that you have thought about a minimum acceptable level for your organization. And when you are unprepared, but you say, well, I don't need a plan, I can act when something goes wrong, you won't have that predefined capacity, that predefined acceptable level for your organization. And that minimum acceptable level you can share if you want with your clients as well, of course, so they know what to expect if something really badly goes wrong. When we talk about business continuity management, then we're talking about a holistic management process. And holistic means the whole, but also all the interconnections between departments in the organization, because some you might think are not very important, but they cannot, the real activities, for instance, in production, cannot survive without supporting departments or functions. So it's a holistic management process that identifies potential threats to an organization, the impact to the business if something goes wrong, if those threats are going to be actual causes for uncertainty. And it gives you a framework, it provides you a framework for building your resilience, a very much a buzzword at the moment, resilience. But at the end of the day, you would like an effective response. And an effective response in case of the coronavirus is that we survive, that we don't have damage at a level that maybe we end up in bankruptcy or lose parts of the business and need to fire people. So if you look at this whole process, then it's looking from one side to vulnerability and threats and build them into risks. And the focus is on continuity of the business. So what it is not is emergency management, so getting people safe out of the building in combination with an evacuation of the premises plan, and it's not crisis management. To make it very simple, so crisis management is managing the crisis, business continuity management is managing the continuity of the business. It's as simple as that. Don't make it more difficult. This is it, and that is what we're going to look at today. So just to make it in basically one picture that I'm going to show you right now is you are going to look at your organization and look at all the activities, everything that you do, processes. The way you want to cut it is up to you, but holistic means the whole organization. And just say, okay, I do a business impact analysis for all my activities, for all my processes, and based on what I think is impact, decide this is an activity that I need to prioritize, that I need a plan for, and this is an activity that, okay, if I don't perform that activity for a week or 2 weeks or maybe even a month, that is not really going to hurt me. There will be no blood spread. So thinking about business impact analysis means that over time, you are going to look at when is it going to hurt me as an organization. And is going to hurt me means that you are looking at different impact areas. So this could be, if I don't do this activity, what about my product quality or safety? What about customer satisfaction maybe? Financial impact? Do I have service level agreements that I need to stick to? Or is there law and regulation? If I don't do this activity, I will break the law. Safety for people, of course, and maybe very important as well, reputation and brand damage. So based on what you think is acceptable level, so you define low, medium, and high impact, and then say, okay, if the impact is at a minimum level, it's not really important. At a medium level, up to a certain extent, I decide then, okay, these are non-critical activities and these are critical activities. So when the pain becomes unacceptable for you as an organization, and as I said, financial or customer service or whatever way you want to look at it. The same we are going to do with all the threats. So just as an example, many organizations need people. So you are vulnerable as an organization because you can't just simply open the door and have enough people in another room to do a certain job. So looking at people, you are vulnerable because you need them, and you can't just open a box or a door and say, okay, come out and help me. The threat that is linked to people is, for instance, they can become sick, as we have now with the coronavirus, or they are simply not there because they are maybe in survival mode because they are helping their family, or they are not allowed to come in. But they can also strike, and there are other ways where you have a situation where you don't have enough people, like a public transport strike. So if you do a risk assessment and a risk analysis, you will have risks that you think are current for you, and okay, I accept those. And again, think about fire, strike, power outage, IT outage, pandemic situation as we have right now, your most important supplier goes bankrupt, all those risks. So what is the chance of it happening, and what will be the impact for you? And based on that, you will have current risks and accepted risks. So the line between those two is your risk appetite. Well, if you combine these critical activities and current risks, you need to build a strategy for those. So you leave the accepted risks. You're not going to do anything about it. You don't make any plans for the non-critical activities, but for the critical activities and the current risks, you need to have a strategy. You need to build your plan B. But that means prioritization. So is one customer going first? Is that your largest customer, or the one that you make the most money with? Or is it a prioritization in products? First this product, then that product, then that product? Or is it on process level? So let's fix this process first. For instance, your distribution to the client, your distribution center, then production, including IT, then other departments like finance and marketing and sales. Is that the right order to do it? But you need to figure out what is the right strategy for me as an organization. And why do I do this? Because I need, for those situations, critical activities and my current risk scenarios. Business continuity plan is built on scenarios. So I have scenarios for the current risks related to my critical activities. Simply, who does what, how, where, and when, and what resources, for instance, equipment, ICT, applications, internal, external parties do we need for this to happen? So in case of a situation that we are in right now with the coronavirus, in a situation that is not worldwide, you could say, okay, I have an organization that cannot function, cannot produce what they're producing because it is in a restricted area, a quarantined area. We have other group companies who can take over what they produce there, and we can still serve our clients. But that needs to be able to do, of course. Organizations like a restaurant that is based in a restricted area, in a closed area, they need to rely on government, and it looks like government is picking up on that issue and is supporting them in different ways. So here on one page, you see what business continuity management is. So it's figuring out what are my critical activities, figuring out what are current risks for me, actual risk at the moment, and that could change, of course, over time. Then figure out what's the right strategy and then build a plan. It's as simple as that. Of course, there's a lot behind it, but it's not more difficult than what you see on this page. So what are the benefits of a business continuity management system? Well, from a business perspective, it's supporting my strategic goals and objectives. So basically, as I just said, what do we need to be successful? Whatever happens. So that could mean knowing what it takes. That could mean figuring out what my minimum acceptable level is to reach my goals. And in this case, whatever happens, if a coronavirus strikes, what do I need to survive? And again, for a lot of companies, this is a harsh period, so it's not going to be simple. The second thing is, if you do a business continuity management system, you are creating a competitive advantage. You're better off doing business with us. Why? Because we will be able to support you, to serve you, whatever happens. We have a plan B, and I see that happening right now. A lot of organizations think that they can act when something is happening. We don't need a plan B. We've never needed it, and people are now struggling because they don't have that plan B. And we're going to look at what that means for organizations in a minute. Another one is that you are protecting and enhancing your reputation and credibility, because you can use this commercially to just saying to our organizations, we are a sustainable business partner. You know, we think about our and your future. We are your friend. We are just more than a simple supplier, because we are protecting you and us, ourselves, of course. Very important, really good to think about. We take your needs and requirements very serious, and we ask you maybe to even be involved, because in our plan B, you might be able to participate. You know, if there's one large client, you might ask them, okay, what would you prefer to have first, this and this product or that product, and get them involved. And as I always say, make them guilty, so they are part of the solution. And you can also tell them, well, in a situation like we can't produce somewhere in one of our plants, this product cannot be produced somewhere else. So they know upfront that they themselves need to find another way of sourcing that product if you can't deliver. At least they know upfront, and you as well. And last but not least, it's contributing to your organizational resilience. Again, a very nice word. You are agile and you are creative in unexpected and even expected disruptive situations. I think we can say now that the coronavirus is an unexpected disruptive situation. Some even say it's the black swan. I don't believe it. I don't agree. But you could say, well, the magnitude of this issue is quite unexpected. It's an unexpected disruptive situation. An expected disruptive situation might be ransomware at the moment. You know, it is going to hit you one day. It's not today, it might be next week or the week after that. So this is quite an expected disruptive situation. And the same you could say with fire. Maybe once in 50 years, but you know, you can expect a fire one day, whatever you do about it, and you better be prepared. And for fire, of course, a lot of organizations are well prepared. So from a financial perspective, of course, it's really about reducing your legal and financial exposure. Let's be honest, if you say, well, we are always the best and here's our service level agreement, well, you need to comply with it in this situation as well. You can't simply say this is a force majeure situation. You know, we could never imagine this. No, but then that should be part of your agreement. And if your service level agreement is this is how we function, that also applies when something happens, even in a coronavirus situation. Of course, laws and regulations. If you need to adhere to certain laws and regulation, that also counts in a situation like this. And maybe, you know, with in the Netherlands, for instance, now on tax issues, people get half a year room to pay later. That's great, but you can't count on it. Same with legal obligations. You know, if in a contract it says specific clauses, still you need to deliver. And if there are penalties in there, you better be ready for it, or maybe try to talk to them. But from a financial perspective, if you have a business continuity management system, you should be able to avoid damage. And that's the last one. So delivering your obligations related to consequences as such, and limiting direct and indirect cost of the disruption. So the one that everybody talks about is damage control, because you have a plan B and you could control your damage. Okay, so if you look at legal obligations, this could also be mandatory reporting, for instance, to the national bank or a regulatory authority, if you are in the insurance or the banking or financial world. But please don't forget that there are reasons for canceling a contract in any contract. So these resolutive conditions could really hurt you because people might take that as the right reason for canceling your contract. And again, damage control is the most obvious one. But also think about projects. Projects with time slots, like in the shipbuilding sector. You get 2 weeks to do your part and then you need to be out because then the next part of the ship is going to be built. So again, that's, you could say, service level agreement, but there could be time slots in projects, and if you don't do your job, then yeah, you might run into a lot of issues. So from the perspective of interested parties, so who is depending on you? You are protecting life, property, and the environment. Here's your link with emergency planning and management. You're considering the expectation of interested parties. You involve interested parties. And you know, if you are talking about interested parties, we talk about your clients, but also your suppliers, who hopefully you keep on ordering stuff. We see that now with restaurants closing, that all the meat and fish and vegetables organizations that supply restaurants now having enormous issues. Providing confidence in the organization's ability to succeed. And please don't forget the authorities and your investors and banks and insurers and suppliers, because if you think that you have everything under control, but your bank says, I don't think so, if you lose their confidence, can you recover? You know, if they pull your loans and your bank arrangements and your credit facilities, you could end up with a big mess. And again, if we look at the coronavirus situation right now, that is really not that harsh, and they are really thinking with the business, under pressure, of course, from the government. So from an internal processes perspective, of course, improving its capability to remain effective during the disruption. You know, and this is your process criticality, your vulnerability, threats and risks, your resource requirements and dependencies, basically the one-page picture that I showed you, that you have that plan B, because you want to be strategically prioritizing your response. And you need to be ready for that. You don't have time now to really think about it. You need to have that already done and your plans in place if you have a system. But not everybody has. Unfortunately, of course, let's be honest about it. Nobody really thinks about this as a funny situation. Well, what sources of impact and how could you or can you prepare? Because to be honest, if we talk about business continuity management, it is could you have prepared? So to be able to deliver your products and services, so whatever you do, it doesn't matter, you require specific resources. You need to determine the resource requirements and implement your plan. And in this specific instance, this is about the coronavirus. And I took this as a source, the ISO 22301 standard, because there they define the main types of resources that you need to consider. And they are all pretty obvious, but still, you just need to think about it, and maybe there are a couple of things you can still do. Well, the first one is people. Very clear, of course, in this coronavirus situation. What is the impact of not having people, or not having enough people, or not the right people? Because in some situations you have maybe in principle enough staff, but you don't have the right people. You're lacking some skills. So what could happen? This is staff that live in a quarantined area, or your company is based there, and people that can't come to work because you are in this quarantined area. Staff are infected or stay at home to avoid this happening. And as I said earlier, staff need to take care of family or are in survival mode. They stay with their family and say, well, I'm not coming to work simply because it's too dangerous for me. I don't want to be infected. What can you do to prepare for this? Well, if you thought about this up front, you could have staff cross-trained. have up-to-date manuals and make sure that you have a pool of alternates. You could also have multiple geographical spread sites where you have people that you can ask to come over, or move the job over there so they can pick it up, or other staff in other sites so they can do it as a service. They can take over, for instance, a call center. You give them the right manuals and scripts, and they can take over, maybe at a lower level. But again, if you haven't thought about that lower level, let's assume you have 25 people in your call center. You might say my minimum acceptable level is 15. Well, the waiting time will go up for people, but that's acceptable. It goes from 30 seconds to 2 minutes. It's acceptable. Our plan B is to have an alternate site where people can take over the call center facility and service, but okay, with less people. So this is how you can prepare against the issue of not having the right or enough people. And you see a couple of dots there because, of course, there are more. The next one is information and data. So the impact could be not available or up to date, so I can't use it. Not very likely in the coronavirus situation, but still, internal, it could be as a result of staff not being available. So that's the reason why data is not available or up to date. But an external, if you use, I don't know, data or information as a service, as a result of the affected supplier. So if they are impacted, they might not be able to supply your data. But again, in a coronavirus situation, this is not really likely to happen. How could you prepare for this situation? Of course, have manual process without information and data, if that is possible. So for instance, in a plant, you might be able to do that. If you are an insurer or in the financial world, where you live and breathe and eat data, that's probably not possible. But also, if it's external, multiple sources. So not having one supplier of the data, again, if possible. And again, there might be other things how you can prepare for situations like this on information and data. And then, of course, the physical infrastructure. In this case, then, such as building, your workplace, other facilities, and associated utilities, so gas, electricity, and water. So the impact, not having access to your building or your workplace, or not functioning as a result of not having gas. You can't heat it, and it still is winter, so you can't access the building because you're not allowed to have people working in a building that is cold. So as a result of the quarantine measures taken, you could be in an area where you're not allowed to go into the building, but even something stupid, between brackets, as not having security staff available because they are all off sick, then you're not allowed probably to access your building, or as I said, no gas, electricity, or water supply. So what could you have done? Again, probably not a lot on making sure that you have enough people. Yes, an alternate security staff organization could be one, but the most obvious one for physical infrastructure, of course, is having alternative sites, or having a work area recovery site where you can work. Organizations like SunGuard, Availability Services, and Coin in the Netherlands and Belgium. And you can have a contract with them for dedicated or syndicated seats where you just go and do your work. And of course, home working. And home working sounds easy, but not always. There could be situations where you only have a limited number of VPN options. There's an organization that has 10,000 people. They have 3,500 VPN options, and all of a sudden everybody needs to work at home. Then you need more, and can you get them? And are you only able to get them at the organization that you have a contract with? So a lot of challenges, but this is how to prepare for not having your physical infrastructure available. To be honest, in the coronavirus situation, this is going to be a tough cookie. if you want to look now for an alternative site or a work and recovery site, it's not going to work. Home working works for instance, again, if you're in the financial world, you might be able to do that. Other organizations, maybe accountancy up to a certain extent, but if you're a bakery or in the meat processing business, it's not going to work. Home working is not going to work then, of course. The next one is equipment and consumables. So the impact is you don't have any stock of your required resources, either equipment or consumables. This could be single sourcing supply that can't deliver. It could be affected, or there's no transportation possible because you are in a restricted area, or the other way around. Materials not being available at all. If you think about the dairy business, if there is no milk, there's no milk. And even if you have multiple suppliers, you might not be able to get milk from anybody. It could be that you have in your product something like starch from Italy. If Italy is locked down, you won't get any starch, and it could be for you a very important raw material. Same with vanilla. The majority comes from Madagascar. If that closes, you won't get any vanilla. Fruit for in your yogurts, if certain fruit products are not available, even if you have multiple suppliers, you might have a problem. But it could also be due to staffing issues that equipment cannot be installed, for instance, projects. So you have a new product line, the old one is already scrapped, you are working to get the new equipment in a week's time, and it's not going to work. Well, you end up having an enormous problem, of course. What could you do here? Of course, multiple suppliers, not always effective, as you could see in that second example as I gave. Management of stock levels, of course, and agreements with suppliers for emergency situations that you already have discussed with them in a certain situation. For instance, shipping it to another location where you can produce, you need to have that agreement with your suppliers, or they might not be able to do that or not allowed to do it. And the same with IT systems. Again, not really likely, but still, if you can't use it, internal as a result of stuff not being available, or external as a result of an affected supplier. And here again, how to prepare. Are there any manual processes possible without use of ICT? And think about multiple sources for external source systems if that is the issue. Transport and logistics is very obvious. If it's not possible, so you can't receive nor send goods, if you produced it but you can't get your, let's use that milk product, to the supermarket, we still have an issue. And the same, of course, with people. If people cannot travel, cannot go from one site to another site, cannot visit the client, then you might have a big issue. So crossing the border of the restricted quarantine area, or your supplier is affected, your transportation company, or public transport is shut down, as we see now with air and train up to a certain extent. So how to prepare for this? An alternative way of transport, road, air, water, whatever is possible. And again, management of stocks, multiple transportation companies. So don't, and I see that a lot, think about it, I don't use only one transportation company as your supplier of that service. And of course, virtual working could help for services if that is at all possible. Okay. Finance. Again, if you don't have any finance, you don't have any business. So make sure that the bank is aware of your plans, because it might have an issue as well, because you can't access your account due to single point of authority. Very dangerous situation, of course. Need additional funding, but the cash is invested. Bank pulls your credit arrangement because they don't believe that you can survive and they don't want damage themselves. So how to prepare? Treasury management to have this scenario incorporated as, okay, let's assume that we have an issue. How can we pull cash out of other sites, or another way of getting the cash? And sure, several people are authorized to transfer money, cash on site, maybe, you can't have millions, but maybe have enough money to help supporting your way of plan B execution. And last but not least, the general one, partners, the impact of no performance of your required services. And again, single sourcing partner, supplier can't deliver. So these are all the elements that you need to look at least. So how to prepare for this is a bit same as the other one, multiple partners and suppliers. You know, don't bet on one horse to win your race. Management of stock levels and knowledge internally, of course. And your key partners and suppliers maybe require a certified business continuity management system. So if you are aware of some key partners and suppliers, don't assume that they will always be able to deliver. Just make sure that they prove that they have a plan B, and maybe even ask them to certify for the business continuity management system. It's not simple, of course. So these are all the elements that you need to look at from a business continuity perspective and figure out what you need to deliver your product or service. So let's be realistic now. Are you too late to react now from a business continuity perspective? For many of the mentioned strategies and solutions, the answer unfortunately is yes. You can't find a second site now, looking for a second supplier, looking for other markets that you can send your product to, people, data, a lot of things. You are basically too late. However, unknown forces can pop up, and you know, if you look at that, the situation is help, support, creative ideas pop up at the moment. You see that in health and healthcare, where people just say, okay, I can help. You see it in different areas, and some of the option can be swiftly organized and implemented up to a certain extent. So the example of additional VPN connections for home working, transportation company, for food, because if you listen to what is being said about supermarkets, 25 to 35% additional sales in the supermarkets, well, they need extra transportation, but these needs to be trucks with cooling. Well, actually, nobody's buying flowers at the moment, so there might be an option to get additional trucks, the right trucks with cooling, because they are used for flowers as well. If they are cleaned the right way, then this might be a solution for your organization. Additional pair of hands for manual work, because now it needs to be done manual. We can't use systems because of it not being able to function. So yes, there are options, but not simple. So let this be a lesson for all of us. You are part of a supply chain, so you need to focus on upstream. So what is flowing towards you? You know, you are somewhere along a river called supply chain. So suppliers, partners, required resources, dependencies, that's all coming towards you. You need to think about that and what you can do, and maybe how you can react, asking your partner to do maybe additional services because you can't do them. And of course yourself, your employees, their needs, can they travel, can they work at home? Broader obligations, your rules and regulations, your reporting. Is there anything you can do there? So you need to think about what is possible short term. Long term is too late maybe. And downstream, of course, your markets, geographies, your clients, can they receive? Because this is part of the issue as well. Because that's where we are, you know. Downstream sounds very simple, but if you can't go to a certain market because it's not allowed anymore, or geographies, a quarantined area, you can't deliver there, and certain clients who say, well, we can't have the product right now because we are closed. Certain shops are already closing. So there are different options, but not in all cases you are too late to react. So you need to communicate, you need to collaborate, and you need to share if you look at the markets, just as an example, let's say you were in the food business and your clients are only restaurants, you might have an issue. If your markets are supermarkets, pops and mom shops, restaurants, events, then the damage may be less because you can ship additional stuff to the supermarkets, and the events and the restaurants will probably go down to a very, very low level. Only the restaurants that deliver might use your stuff. And whether that's vegetables or meat or dairy products. So a lesson for everybody again is not bet on one horse, not having services for one market if you can, of course. It's easy to say. But communicate, collaborate, and share is very important. Well, let's give you a golden nugget. If you haven't grasped it yet, not being prepared was a big mistake. Unfortunately, a lot of organizations were not prepared and think that they can act when something goes wrong. So not being prepared was a big mistake. But mistakes will always happen, so please don't make the next mistake by not learning from your mistake, assuming you survived this one, because again, this is a very serious issue. This basically is my presentation. So if you have any questions, please let me know.
Thank you, Gert. Yeah. When I'm right, I unmuted all attendees. So if you have a question, you can ask Gert now. No questions.
It was very clear.
Okay. If there are no questions, then I want to thank Gert for his clear presentation. Another thing, next Tuesday, we have the last webinar about the coronavirus. It's about how humans respond, how nations respond to this coronavirus. Why do they take measures they take? And Jacob van der Slot will talk about that. At our website and on LinkedIn, you can enroll for this webinar. So that was it for today. Thank you very much again, and hopefully see you next Tuesday. Bye.